Guess what?
What?
It's time for another episode of the perennial favorite segment we have within our podcast, Tony's Life Lessons. And to those of you I hear saying, but Tony, that's literally never come up before. How could it be a perennial favorite? I say, hey, shut up. Today's life lesson is what I'm going to call physical mnemonics. As we all know, mnemonics are a thing you come up with to help you remember stuff. Often it's little phrases or things like that to help you remember things. The classic one is like a Roy G. Biv to remember the colors of the the rainbow.
Hmm.
Apparently, I need one to remember the word rainbow, but things like that. All the various ones to remember uh the planets in order and stuff like that. There's all sorts of ones. I use them a lot. I like them. However, I have over the years developed a physical version of this. Now, this sounds weird because the best physical mnemonic would just be write a goddamn post-it note. And we all know this, and we all have things that we write a note for. And sometimes I do. There are important things I do write notes for. I do have memos for, stuff like that. There's a lot of things that I don't always remember, but that I am too lazy to make a thing for. You're like, I should make it. Nah, I'll remember, but then you don't. This is for those. A physical mnemonic is basically change something very obvious within your physical world while you're like thinking about the thing, like pointedly decide to change something such that when you come back later and you see it's like that, you're like, that's weird. Oh, that was to remind me. And sometimes they can be very related. Like the most common one I have, and this is why I was thinking about it today, because uh periodically we have these mats in front of the litter box, these sort of rubber textured mats, and they get gross, and so they get washed. And in fact, we have two on top of each other, and it's a cycle where I wash this one, and then when it's clean, I put it, whatever. So after it gets washed, it doesn't get dried because it's rubber. It gets hung up, and it specifically gets hung up on our shower curtain, which is fine. But sometimes, like today, I'm like, oh, the wash is done. I was about to take a shower, so I don't want to hang it up now. I'm gonna go take a shower. But by the time I come back, I've forgotten. And
Mhm.
hours later, I'm like, oh crap, that thing is still sitting in there. So I will lift up the washer, which the washer is never like that. And so when I come back out in the kitchen, I'm like, that's up. Oh yeah, that's up because, and it's very simple because also if you're like, why is it up? You can look inside and see. So that's a very straightforward one. But I've also had ones where it's like, okay, we need to take Trish early to work tomorrow, or Trish brought home her computer. We need to take, and so I will just do crap like there's two bottles of pills on the counter. I'm just gonna stack them on top of each other in the middle of the bathroom counter. So as soon as I wake up in the morning, first thing I do, go to the bathroom, and I go in there, and I'm gonna be like, "Why are they?" Oh yeah, because Trish has to go to work early, or because whatever. And as I am old and forget everything, I find that these are very useful because I may be old and I may be forgetful. I'm also still very lazy. So this is a happy sort of medium for that. And I
Mm,
think it's also a
mm.
very early stage. Like if I start getting really absent-minded and like early onset dementia, I'm just going to be like, why are these pills like this? I don't know, a ghost. But for right now, at least, if I'm thinking about it when I set it up, I will definitely remember. I have yet to have one of these where I'm like, oh yeah, that was what was that for? I have yet to have that. Although you have to make it weird enough that you would notice. Um, so what are your feelings on this?
Well, things like this. When I was growing up, the classic one was to tie a string around your finger, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
tie a string around your finger while you're thinking about the thing, and it'll remind you. But there, yes,
But the
this is
problem
a
is if that's the one, you're like, oh crap, I've had like six different things I tied strings on. What was this one?
right, right. it's I think what you're talking about to like make it, like you said, of the thing that's going to stand out. Well, for example, in my office here, I use a laptop that I close every night. If I wanted to remember something in the morning without writing it down, I could simply place something on top of the laptop, because I never do that. And I'd see that and I'd go, oh, I remember why I did that. But I also
Exactly.
I've got a marker board here. I could just write things down
Yeah,
just as
and there
easily.
and there are some like that too.
But yes,
The
also
more
there
as
are,
time goes on, I'm better, especially if it's a recurring thing. It's just on my phone as a calendar. I now have two of them. I didn't used to have one for the hat at all, but now that we've split the day we record and the day we post, just to be safe, I now have a weekly reminder to record and a separate weekly reminder to post the damn thing, because I'm
the
like, I'm
one
gonna forget one of them.
the one you said about opening the washing machine. That's a good one, because we don't keep our washing machine door open either. So if it's open, that was for a reason, and
There's a
then you can
reason.
kind of remember why. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. And and just process, like again with the washer, like the dryer. If there are clothes in the dryer, either they are currently being dried, or because I should specify our washer and dryer is from the 19th century. And among other things, the dryer doesn't stop. Like you cannot set it to go a certain amount of time.
Oh,
Like it originally you could, but long before we showed up, not a thing. So you just have to like turn it on and then remember to come back and like check it and stuff like that. But so I have a thing where if the dryer is open at all, even just like a crack, if it's not firmly closed shut, that means there's clothes in
yeah, that's
there.
good.
If it's firmly closed shut, I know. So, and this becomes a thing because sometimes I do take a while to get it out of there. So if I'm going to do a load of wash, I can look and be like, do I have to clear something out of the dryer? And I don't have to like open it up and look in. I just know. So yeah, I have little tricks like that. But
That's good.
I I am hitting that point that I've always talked about being afraid of. My memory's starting to go just in teeny places, but like,
Hmm.
and not to a bad level because I've always had very good memory, but to the point that like every aspect of my life I cannot just mentally juggle, which is what I used to do. So
Mhm.
now I'm coming, and a lot of it is memos on the phone, calendar reminders, but other little things like this,
Yeah.
and soon an assistant.
Hmm.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Magical Talking Hat Podcast, the only podcast in the world that can protect you from free radicals. I mean, prove me wrong, because if the fucking pomegranate juice people can do it, I mean, what? Come on. Come on. I'm Tony.
And I'm William, and this is episode 657.
All right. I am going to be very I'm going to rule this episode with an iron fist,
Hmm.
because it is too early for our spooktacular, but it's kind of happening anyway. We got a lot of horror to go through,
We do.
and we got to focus on that.
Hmm.
Yes, so let's just throw something. Okay, so real quick, if you're just joining us for the first time, we have a hat. It's magical in that it has its own email address, themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com. People sometimes write into that email address, themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com, with whatever the crap they want. The hat magically forwards it to us. We read them, we talk about them. Nobody did that this time, so too bad. But you should do it. Themagicaltalkinghat@gmail.com. There you go. Anyway, I'm going to give you a very brief time here to talk about your week. I know you started your practicum, so
Yeah.
find a way to tell me about that in like 5 minutes.
Oh, it's going really well. That's all.
Sweet. Is it what you thought it would be, or is it
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean,
good? Good.
there's
Good.
always surprises. You meet people that you
Yeah.
didn't know you were going to meet who are really cool, and you
Did
learn
you meet Weird
procedures.
Al Yankovic?
No.
People seem to meet him when they don't expect to meet him. Like that's a common one I hear for people.
No, it's so there were some things I wasn't sure about until it started, obviously. and some logistical things I kind of had to figure out, but it's all good.
And I
think it's
assume a lot of it that even more than usual, you won't ever be able to discuss with us.
most of it,
So,
sure, but
but
it
in
there's
general
also
terms,
the stuff I could discuss. It's not interesting or anything. It's just I perceive that it's going to go well. There's school stuff that I have to do that I'm actually a little bit annoyed by, but it's not going to be hard or anything. It's just, it's probably going to be a more fun 10 weeks than I've had up to now. And I've had some pretty fun 10-week periods, residencies were fun and there were some classes that were really fun. But this is going to be very maybe fun's not the word, but it's going to be
engaging,
exciting.
maybe.
Yeah,
Like, 'cause
engaging.
you're going to be doing stuff,
Yeah,
not reading about other people,
right,
doing stuff.
and fulfilling in a lot of ways. I think it's just going to be a good experience all the way around. I'm a little worried about how internship's going to be because now that I know how practicum is, and I realize internship is like that, like pumped up to 11 or whatever. Well, I might have to make different plans for internship. It's nothing concerning or anything. It's just like I'm thinking, okay, maybe internship I need to do a little something different than this, but it's all good, and I'm really excited about it. And I think it's going to go well.
And it's early days to get a handle on
exactly. We just started.
This is not only may the job not be what you think it is at this moment, but also things that are a certain level of difficulty may seem like much less difficulty after you've done it for 10 weeks, things like that.
Yeah, and the concern I have is just that I don't know if this site is equipped to do all the things that I need for an internship. Is what I mean. I might have to maybe
do an exchange student program,
switch over to something else. But again,
get bused to a new district.
I do have to think about it ahead of time because it takes time to do that, but there's nothing alarming about it. And I might not have to do it at all. It's just something to think about. But I think it's going to be a great 10 weeks. I'm very much looking forward to it. And it feels good to, actually be in an office with clients and meeting peers and supervise people who are going to be supervising me maybe for the next 3 or 4 years. So it's been nice. So, but I don't have a lot to say about it.
Do you have something at hand? You can write something down.
I mean, I could take a note on the laptop here.
You should do this. Okay. This is out of nowhere. I literally today just watched sort of a recap of some of the YouTubers I watched being at, I think, New York Comic Con. And one of the booths they visited that was fascinating to me that I'd never heard of is called Geek Therapeutics. And it is by and large a group that provides resources and training to therapists and mental health professionals to be able to engage with geeks on their own terms. So there's video game ones and D&D ones and anime based ones and how to do that. And it sounded like a brilliant. They also have a lot of, I think, client facing resources like books that are like the psychology of Zelda and things like that, which are also interesting. But I found myself thinking, maybe I should email my former therapist. Is that stepping out of bed just to let her know? Because she works with a lot of kids, so this could be really good. But then just now, as you were talking, I was like, oh, also William might find this useful. So I don't know jack about it except a 5-minute thing in a YouTuber video, but it looked very promising.
Well, I mean, that makes sense to me. I mean, one of the things that they talk about, so sort of the what do I say, popular thing, the stylish thing, I guess, to talk about in therapy circles these days is how how a lot of therapists don't feel comfortable broaching religion or spirituality in therapy. And that's something that we need to get better at because a lot of people want to talk about that kind of stuff. And of course, to me, I immediately think of all kinds of other cultural things that might be helpful for you to be able to broach in therapy, including what you're talking about, geek stuff. Because for a lot of people who I've known who would categorize themselves as geeks, many of them would also not consider themselves religious, maybe not spiritual, but it's pretty clear that whatever their fandom is or whatever their personal geek obsession is, that's pretty close. And if you're going to
At
understand
least in
them,
that it is a very central defining aspect of them.
yes, I mean, and there are,
Yeah.
and it's, they think about it a lot. They organize a lot of their life around it. I mean, it resembles religious practice in a lot of ways. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it resembles it in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And if you don't understand that person's cultural connection to that thing, to me, that is going to be as detrimental to your efforts as a therapist as if they were a very religious person and you didn't understand anything about that, or they had some other big cultural aspect of their life and you don't know anything about it and you're not talking about it, and even though it's
Yeah.
clearly important to them. So yeah, I think
I
this is really
remember
interesting.
my first therapist trying to explain to them about role-playing games, because that was a very big aspect of my life at the time, and they had no idea.
Yeah.
And it kind of got there, but like, yeah, there's a lot to it, and especially nowadays, people can really get into it, and what you're into and how you approach it can also say a lot about you. So you can learn a lot about the client by learning about that stuff. You can
Yes.
also connect with the client by learning
Yep.
about that stuff.
Correct.
This does crack me up in that. So we played last week. We played D&D. It was really, really fun. It was also really bad. We almost died a lot, but it was a really
Oh.
fun time. And but and this is what's so cool about these kind of things too. Some shit went down that was based entirely on how the dice went, that I'm now like, this is a pivotal moment for my character. My character is about to change. I'm not sure how yet. I've got some options to consider and I want to talk with the DM, but like, this was not expected on my part. This was not a direction I expected the character to go. And now I have to deal with that. And I love that kind of thing. But Trish was talking a little bit afterwards about it, because in some ways, this is her first long form tabletop.
Okay.
She's done somewhere like we play every 2 months or whatever, but that's not really the same. And she's run a couple things, but this is like the one where she's really looking at her character in terms of arc and stuff. And at a certain point, I basically was like, I have a suggestion, and I don't. This is gonna sound condescending. I do not mean it. And what I was basically like, because my wife's a software tester by trade. I was like, treat it like software testing. Like, this is the outcome you want. This is the data you have to work with. These, and and it was really funny because it's not a way I've ever thought about it. But I just know my wife, and the way she was talking, I was like, this could be a thing. So yeah. So anyway, Geek Therapeutics. You should check that out.
I'll look it up.
All right. My quick rundown. My phone, my new phone, my big beautiful phone.
Mhm.
I'm mostly playing games on it.
Okay.
A lot of games. A lot
Is
of
that
games. A lot of idlers. Playing a lot of idlers. I do love those. What we used to call clickers or tappers, but now they're just, you don't even have to do that part. A lot of them suck. I am working really hard at, like, I'm grabbing a lot of games where like there's an ad for it or whatever, and I'll try it. As soon as I'm not having fun, I'm out. Um, I will say at this point, I only have one recommendation if people are into this: Idle Apocalypse. It is a very fun, humorous game. It is also more than a lot of them. It is better at obfuscating the keep making the numbers go up aspect of it. Like, there's a lot of things to do, and obviously they all interconnect in a way to make the numbers go up, but it's just a little bit more robust, and it's really kind of fun. You're clearly just an angry um antisocial guy who's decided he's going to destroy and like you're building this tower and all this stuff, and meanwhile you're throwing monsters at these heroes, and the heroes have all these snide comments because they clearly knew you from before. And there's always this cycle in these games where you have to blow up everything and start over. Like, that's part of the process, is you keep going, and there are things that you get to hold on to each time, so every time you do a little bit better. And in this version, you actually destroy the world, and then one of the champions just casts a spell that reverts the entire world back to normal except your tower. And so then you have to start your tower again. And then there's things like there's a a event going on right now where your sister has decided you're bad at destroying the world, so she's destroying the world. So you don't want her to do that. You don't want her to steal your thunder, as it were. So you're financing heroes to go attack her, and it's just a separate event thing going on. It's very fun. I enjoy it. I'm playing some others. They aren't good enough to recommend. I've also found out that for every game, there are thousands of them. I'm playing a water pouring color matching game. And in that game, I get so many ads for other water pouring color matching games that are like identical. Also, I don't know what happened, but last night after we came back from dinner with the neighbors, my ads started taking a slightly sort of porny turn. And I don't think I did anything, but just weird ones. Like suddenly I was getting busty anime dating sim ads or ads for adult coloring apps, which I got a lot, but these were all the things to color were like really voluptuous pinups in this particular app and stuff. And I'm just like, what did I do? I don't, was there something about going next? I don't know. It's very weird. So that's odd. Anyway, that's my phone. I still like my phone. And the battery life is amazing. I don't think there's anything else non-horror to talk about. Have you got anything non-horror you need in here?
There was a topic I was going to bring up, but we can talk about it some other time. It's just a
what is it?
thing.
What is it?
I've been experiencing this thing that I call temporal vertigo. And I wanted to see if that was something anyone else experienced.
I have never heard of that.
Well, I think I made it up.
Temporal vertigo, people. Do you know it? Do you have it? Wait, okay, define it.
Well, let me give you an example of it. That's the best way I can.
All right.
So one time I experienced it, I was in, it was earlier this fall. I was in a store and there was like an a back to school sale or whatever. And so I see this back to school sale sign and suddenly I'm remembering like all these times in my childhood when I went back to school shopping with mom in a Target or anything else, and just this rush of memories just kind of come in pretty much in chronological order. And then there's the times I took the kids to go school shopping and all that just in a big rush while I'm standing there looking at this thing. And it's not just that these memories come, but I experience physically that feeling of vertigo. So it does come with this sort of physical response, but the vertigo is not induced by like looking over a ledge or something. It's induced by this sort of temporal experience.
Memory. Yeah.
And I mean, I can experience, I do get vertigo pretty bad, regular vertigo. Like if I'm using Google Earth and I start with it looking at my house and I say, the Paris Opera House, and it zooms out and it zooms back in, I'll feel vertigo with that. That's so weird. But yes, this is temporal vertigo. And then I started thinking, I wonder if when I feel deja vu, that's just the briefest moment of like a little temporal vertigo.
I mean, because there is some of that, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Back to school sales make me dizzy. I feel that's unrelated.
But there's other examples, but that's an example.
Yeah. No, I think it's only you, and you should feel weird and bad about it. However, if any listeners do have a thing like this, go to the blog, themagicaltalkingcat.com, and talk about it. And then next time we can go into depth, maybe getting more information from others.
I experienced
simply do not have the time.
What made me think of talking about it was I experienced it just before we started because I was watching a weather report and it was talking about early winter flurries or whatever. And immediately I had all these vivid memories of times where I was down on the farm, we were watching television, and the weather guy was saying we might get our first snowfall, like several years of memories, just boom, 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 like that. And I felt a little of that.
I think
happens to me a lot now.
Your simulation pod needs a firmware update, is what it sounds like.
Maybe that's it. It's weird.
Do you occasionally see just like gray rectangles floating in front of you that say okay or cancel? Is that like
No, no.
pop up? Because I do, but
But
I
you've
don't
never
experience the
experienced
thing you're
anything like
talking
that
about.
where it's like it's something reminds you of like a whole bunch of experiences you've had in your life and they hit you all at once.
No, no, no.
No.
I've experienced sense memories from a variety of senses. I've experienced deja vus. I have never had that sort of cascading, overwhelming effect, let
Hmm.
alone to create a physical response like you were talking
Hmm.
about. Again, I think you are alone and bad. Uh, but the rest of you, seriously, somebody probably knows what he's talking about somewhere.
I
Go
think
to
it
the
is
blog
like
magictalkinghat.com
I
and
think
we
it is
can incorporate
like
it. Jazz,
deja
make it up.
vu.
You know you want it. If nothing else, pretend you know what he's talking about
I think it
and
is like deja
contribute.
vu. It's just like deeper or longer or something. It's just not. It's instead of a little event and then you forget it. It's just this. You hear about people. Oh, this thing happened in my whole life flashed before my eyes. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe that's just all it is. But I've
You're
never
about to
experienced.
die every time you
Yeah,
see.
I don't remember ever experiencing that life. I mean,
Maybe,
people would say that, and I never really understood what they were talking about.
maybe it was a magical cow that gave you the valve, and now
Yeah, right.
it's this is a slightly more wholesome version of the like you got a serial killer's eyes, and now you like
Right. It's a
this is
magical cow.
do you ever get overcome by remembering just like chewing on grass and
No.
laying down when you think it's gonna rain? Don't at me. I know that one's not real. Everybody likes to talk about that one, but it's not a thing. Anyway, we simply don't have time
I'm
for
sorry.
your issues.
Sorry.
That's not what you pay me for. We got to get into horror because there's a lot of stuff here.
Okay. 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 Okay.
And you know what the main entree is going to be, but we're going to start further back. Let's get this out of the way here. I have started and already stopped on Changeling.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Yes,
Stopped, huh?
because
Why? Just stop.
stop because it is a garbage show for garbage people.
Oh,
No,
I don't
that's not what
know.
it is. Here's what I'm going to say. It is very interestingly filmed and shot. It is very well acted. It is very interestingly written. It is very clearly, and I know you know this, and otherwise you wouldn't have said you thought I like it. Is very clearly gonna have. It's got supernatural elements. It's not just people being bad. Here's the thing. There are 8 episodes. I watched the first 3. During those 3, nothing explicitly supernatural happens at all. There is weird shit, but it is all couched in such a way that it could be hallucination or imagination. Frequently it's a dream, things like this.
Hmm.
So what the show is 3 hours of incredibly harrowing trauma and people dealing very poorly with incredibly serious mental health issues. And it's just a knife to the gut for like 3 hours. And here's the thing, last seconds of the last episode uh made it clear, like I'm pretty sure starting the next one we're going to be getting supernatural with this shit. But 3 out of 8 episodes I have burned all my patience and my trust. I'm just out. I think Trish is going to keep watching, but it just took too long and it was too hard. Like
Well,
the shit. I after episode 2, I was like, I'm gonna give it another one. And I wasn't sure why, because I was very unhappy after episode 2. And then episode 3 started and I was mad.
well,
Because
we
episode 3
watched.
really wants you to feel terrible.
Yeah, we watched all 8 episodes, and my opinion is you made the right call. Because I felt the same way, honestly, after the same number of episodes, and I thought, is this going to pay off? Well, I stayed with it to see if it would, and in my opinion, it did not. Now, other people might feel different,
All right.
but I so much agree with everything you just said, and I stuck with it, and I'm not like sorry I did, but I didn't need to. Like I could have stopped when you did, and that
It
would have been
strikes
fine.
me as a thing that will most likely have a resolution, but not a particularly unusual or original one.
Well, I I
Like,
kind of
I
thought
can predict how it's gonna go at this point. Maybe it wouldn't, but I can sort of guess.
I wondered if you would stick you would feel differently about it than me because I didn't know how much your admiration for the main actor in it, who is also an executive producer. I thought maybe
Yeah.
that would carry you through. I mean, I like him too, but I don't know if I like him that much.
I
But I
think
thought you
that's
might.
part of the problem is if the show were slightly worse acted, I might have been okay. But like these people took me through it. I was
Mm,
with them and it was
mm,
hard and it
mm.
was and lots of world building totally non-supernatural side things that are also just awful, like racism and sexism and misogyny in
Yeah,
ways
yeah.
that
Right, right.
just are part of the deal.
Yeah.
And it builds and it's realistic. Like I get it, like nothing about it is I'm like you jerks, but I'm just like I don't enjoy this, I don't enjoy this.
No, I don't blame you.
And
I don't blame
by
you.
3 episodes I'm like, even if the next 5 are awesome, I'm not sure it's worth it. Like maybe that becomes a weird me having to actually judge the TV show like it was a person, but I'm just like, you had your chance, sort of. Like,
Yeah, I get it.
and
I get it.
even if I thought this is where it gets good, no.
Well, I think I wonder. So I don't know if it's based on a book, I guess.
Yes. And weird as hell because we have the captions on and it's got a dude's name who's the narrator. And we're like, I wonder what character he's going to be. And then the next, I think they didn't have opening credits in the first episode or we weren't watching or something. And the second one, he's the author of the book. He's
Right.
not a character. They just had the author of the novel narrating the TV show, which I find silly, but also kind of cool.
Yeah.
And he has a
Um,
cool voice for narration.
no, yeah, it works. It works. Yeah, and I noticed that also the narrator was the author. And I thought, okay, well, that's pretty cool.
For a second, we thought it was a meta thing where like the author of the book put a character in the book that was the off like, but no.
But I wonder if it suffers from, because the author's so involved with it. I wonder if it suffers a little from not really knowing how to adapt the book to a TV show, because I could just can't help but think this would work better as a book, and it's not really working as a TV show. I think maybe there were some changes they needed to make that they didn't make because the author was so heavily involved. I mean, Gaiman doesn't seem to have that problem. He seems to understand what you need to do. Or also, I think a lot of his books are very cinematic.
He has that now.
Well,
He's
okay,
not always had that.
right, but his stuff sort of starts out pretty cinematic anyway.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but I can tell that the book this is based on is a very literary and probably is a great read, but you can't just force that into a TV format, or it's just not gonna work. And I think they might have made that mistake. But now I'm just speaking for myself. Maybe other people think it's great and they understand it. They think it's wonderful.
I
But for me,
suspect
it's
it's
not very
really good
accessible.
for the right audience.
Yeah, you might be
If
right.
you are one of those people who just really enjoys, I mean, great filming,
The acting's
really
wonderful.
cool visuals in general.
Yeah.
If you're one of those who just loves a good performance, even when it's hard on you, like good shit. The across the board, the cast. Like I love Lakeith Stanfield. I essentially don't know any of the others, but they're really good.
But did you find the plot and arc and character arcs a little bit hard to follow at all? Or
in the beginning, yes, actually, that was the thing. We watched the first episode, and I said, "I'm like, what do you think?" And basically, my take on it was, seems really good. Maybe in the next episode, I'll figure out what the hell it's about.
Yeah,
Those were my exact words.
Well,
And this can be a thing sometimes. I actually first noticed this in certain anime back in the day, is the first episode is very in media res and shit be happening. and you do not understand it. And then the second episode, we flash back or we do something that tells us what's happening.
Mm.
The first episode is sort of just a splash and a, here's the kind of thing you're going to experience. And then the second one is like, here's what's going on. And there was a little bit of that here. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Quite famously, that's sort of what Fox executives did with Firefly, and it didn't work. I mean, I don't think they were thinking quite in those terms, but they fucked it up that way. And I felt a little bit of that, but yeah, and especially the first episode was very disjointed. There's a bit where our protagonist is going to have dinner with two women. That's as much as I'll say about that. And we spent that whole scene, which is not a short scene, very confused about what was happening. Like one of the women, we didn't understand who she was. And she kept saying a lot of things that there are places in it where people don't talk the way people talk.
Right.
I will admit to that. But there's a lot of, and it really enjoys having you see the impact of something before it shows you what the something was. We do a lot of like jumping at like, oh my God, things are going to happen. And then we jump to, oh, it's done. And then we'll be like, okay, here's what it was. Third episode really had that. Third episode just was awful. And then we jumped to, I later learned, we didn't specify, I later learned 3 months later. And then most of the episode went by where before I got to the bit about knowing how we got from the start to 3 months later. Most of the episode happened before that information was given. And yeah, I didn't really enjoy that, I suppose. Wow, maybe this isn't that good. I thought it was just me, but now I'm starting to wonder.
I mean, I don't know either. If
I do. I mean, there's so much to like about it. I really do think the right people. I don't want to dissuade people from checking it out.
Yeah, I would love for someone to watch it, and then if they liked it, like go to the blog and like talk about, well, this, and this, and maybe that might
I want to
help me understand.
And I definitely plan to go to Wikipedia and read up on it as I am wont to do in such things.
Yeah.
Although in this one I'm half tempted to go check out the book, but I don't know. All right, let's get that out of the way. That's it. We got more important things. And I know you think you know what's coming, but no, not yet. Not yet. Again, make a note of this.
Okay.
Trish discovered a movie and we watched it and it was really good.
Oh.
A horror movie, and it's really good.
Okay.
And I highly recommend it to most people. It is a movie from 2020. It is called The Empty Man. It is available on Hulu. You can also rent it for pretty cheap. I think like $4 at various streaming places. I had not heard of it that I know of. This is a problem with this movie is not well known, and there are two main reasons for this.
Okay.
One is it came out in 2020. Nobody was fucking paying attention. We were all doing our own horror thing at the time. But the second one, as you may have noticed in that I told you the title, is it has a title that is extremely similar to 1,000 other horror movie titles, most of which are terrible. The Bye-Bye Man, The Boogeyman, the other movie called The Boogeyman, the other movie called The Boogeyman, Hollow Man, Nowhere Man, all the mans. And I genuinely, based on looking, like I trusted my wife to check it out and she wasn't sure either, but the title and the little description or whatever, I'm like, this is a thing. This is there's an urban legend that if you do this, the empty man comes and eats your face and whatever, which fine. I've seen those. Sometimes they're fine, but often they're just dull, whatever. Supernatural sort of supernatural slasher, but like, you know, again, like the Bye Bye Man was a famously terrible one. I think I saw two of the ones called The Boogeyman. Please, people, stop calling your movies The Boogeyman. There's several of them out there already, and they're all very similar. Don't do it. I've seen these before. They're not. I don't find them interesting. And this movie, for the first, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes maybe, feels like it's one of those. It is not one of those.
Mm.
It is super not one of those. Um, it is. Here's what I'm going to say about it to talk it up here. The thing I love about it, it has a rich, interesting, and somewhat original lore. Uh, it is, while there is sort of twist at the end, it is very much of you getting pieces along the way. It's one of those that if you pay attention to the details in the background or like read the things when they look through the folders or whatever, you will get pieces. But Trish and I both agreed we like weren't there when the final thing happened. We didn't have all the pieces, and that was kind of cool. Um, it is Trish really liked it. It does a lot of visual effects that she found very scary, but like pseudo subtle ones, like things about like how people moved and stuff that she found very scary,
Mm.
in a way that she enjoyed. Um, yeah, it's covering ground that I don't think a lot of movies have. It borrows from a lot of places. It's not a wholly original premise, but it does it in ways that I find very interesting. It's pretty well shot. It's pretty well acted. Uh, it's it's very cleanly shot. It's one of those. I'll give you the perspective of sort of its level. Stephen Root is in this movie. He's only in one scene. It's a pretty long scene, and he does a lot of the talking in it, but it's only one scene. So that's the level of budget and clout for a movie like this. They could afford to get Stephen Root for arguably slightly more than a cameo, but kind of just a big cameo. So it's on that level. But yeah, I would say I need to word this right. I was thinking about this earlier. Of movies, of horror films that have come out in the last handful of years, it is probably one of the best ones I have seen.
Hmm.
I don't want to go so far as to be like it's better than classics. It's like there's some really great horror movies out there, but like I can't think of one that's come out recently that I've liked better than this. This was really good. Very engrossing. It's decent length. I think it is a 2 hour, maybe even a little over 2 hour, but it doesn't feel like it stretches. It is also one of these that I really want to rewatch because it's like knowing what's happening a lot of, and in fact later Trish and I did a lot of like, but what about this? Oh my God, that was because of this. And like, it's a
Yeah.
whole thing. And it's not, I don't think it's a 100% clear cut interpretation. And in fact, Trish has some theories involving people in the movie and how reliable they are as narrators, kind of thing, that she and I kind of have different versions of it already. But like, you don't end it being like, I'm what? I don't understand what happened. Like, unless you weren't paying attention,
Right.
you don't end it like confused or unfulfilled in terms of the plot. But no, it had a lore and a concept that it actually followed through on, and it was really good. Like we were talking as we do, so I'm like making fun of little bits or whatever. And a couple times I had to be like, just for the record, I actually really think this is very good. And she's like, no, I agree, this is really good. And it's just funny because like the opening section, it's one of those that goes for a while before you actually get the opening title.
Right.
And Trish was like, I think my favorite part was that opening section. And she was talking about it after. And I'm like, that's really interesting because that was my least favorite part. But now I'm sitting here going, I think part of it was I was making some assumptions during that are not true. And again, rewatching it, I think would be really interesting. It's me. I probably won't rewatch it. I never watch a movie twice except Black Panther for some reason. Um, but I want to. I think it would definitely benefit from a second watch, but I would highly recommend it unless you are somebody that what I have just described sounds horrible. I would check it out. It's not a perfect movie, by any stretch in a lot of ways, but it's good. I think it's a very good movie. I don't think it has anything to real feel sorry about. Um, and it's got some originality to it. I would highly recommend.
I am noting it. We'll see if we can give it a look. But you said it was on Hulu.
It is on Hulu, and that was the thing is a lot of people don't have Hulu, so I was looking around, and there's other places, not for free, but places where you can rent it, and it was pretty cheap. I think it was like $3.99 on like Apple or Amazon or whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, really, really enjoyed it. Was really impressed. It's by David Pryor, who is one of those names I have to watch out for. I mix up David Pryor with a guy named David A. Pryor, both of whom have produced and directed a lot of films. One of whom has produced and directed films for decades that range from the trashiest, dumbest B movies you've ever seen to actually kind of decent movies in all the varying genres. And one of them has only been around for a decade or two and has done mostly horror stuff. I have a similar, this is a David thing, I think. I have a similar problem with David S. Goyer and David A. Goyer. There's the same thing. Like one of them did Bright, one of them did Suicide Squad, or maybe that's the same guy because I don't know, but like one of them sucks and one of them doesn't suck as much, and so it's a similar thing. So when this started, I was like, oh my god, this is either going to be real good or real bad, and then later I was like, this is too good, and I looked it up and I'm like, yeah, this isn't the same guy I thought I was. So, but yeah, really like that. All right, it's time. Let's do it. The Fall of the Ush of Hauser. Now, I assume you two have finished your second viewing.
No, just our first.
All right. Are you're still working on the second?
I don't know. We're not going to watch it a second time, I don't think.
Interesting. I have only seen the first three.
Okay.
Which is the first one, I don't remember what it's called. Mask of the Red Death and Murder of at the Rue Morgue.
I think Midnight Dreary or something the first episode's called.
Possibly. I specify because when you hear the titles, it's really easy to remember which episode. If I tell you the third episode, you don't remember. But if I say Murder at the Rue Morgue, you know what episode I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So that should give you perspective. Go.
Oh, you want my opinion about it?
No, leave.
Okay, see you later.
Yes, I want your opinion.
I feel like if you are the more of a Edgar Allan Poe fan you are, I think the more you'll like it, but with this caveat. I felt like the show, it felt like the person who made it had read a lot of Edgar Allan Poe, but didn't understand it. And I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying that doesn't come through very much in the show to me. So if you are a big fan and what you're looking for is someone who really is, I mean, like a really deep homage to Poe, I don't think you're going to get that. But I think you're going to feel smart knowing all the references and, oh yeah, I know what that is. I mean, and maybe if you don't think Poe gets enough love out in the popular culture, you'll like that. But if your standard is, I want to see someone who like is really going to capture the aesthetic, is going to capture the mood, is going to capture all this stuff. Well, I don't think it does that. I don't think it has time to do that for all the Poe references it's trying to cram into every second of on the screen. I think the performances are very good. I think the writing is very good. But I enjoy Poe, but I appreciate more the mood and the aesthetic of what he creates sometimes more than the plot or the character, which sometimes is lacking for me in Poe stories. But you know, and the the what do I want to say? Like some of the more gory aspects of Poe, let's put it that way. I don't care about that. What I care about is all of the stuff he builds around that to make that effective for someone like me, because you need to build it up for me to be able to picture and resonate with that and feel anything about it. Otherwise, you're just clinically describing some gross thing that I'm just not going to care about. So overall, I would recommend it. I think it's good television, really, but I don't think this is something that Abby and I are going to watch like over and over. It doesn't resonate with us like Hill House did or Midnight Mass does.
Interesting. All right.
But
well,
we did like
this is why I knew we needed a lot of time, because there are layers to this. Let's talk about as a Poe adaptation here, because I feel the same way you do, but I think that, as often happens, I came to a different conclusion. I think the more of a Poe fan you are, the less you're going to like it, because and to be fair, I am partially stealing that there's a gentleman, Dark Corners Reviews is his YouTube channel, and he mostly reviews old shitty horror and sci-fi and stuff, like B movies. Old black and white, a lot of Bird Eye Gordon, that kind of deal. But he started over COVID, and now this is kind of a thing of his. He will do streaming reviews, and they are movies that he doesn't think are bad, that he just reviews. And so sometimes it is classic ones that are now available somewhere, but a lot of times it is current stuff that comes out. And he did a review specifically of the first episode. And so after we watched the first episode, I watched that review. And he went so far as to say he thinks it's, and I agree, is a very bad Edgar Allan Poe adaptation. He also amends Poe is very hard to adapt, which I also agree with. But here's the thing. Fall of the House of Usher has 1,000,001 Edgar Allan Poe references. That's it.
Well,
it has nothing to do with like some of the basic plot elements, but by and large, it is not Poe at all.
Right. But in many ways, Hill House is also a bad adaptation of the original Shirley Jackson.
Absolutely.
I mean,
and Bly Manor is a very bad adaptation of Turn of the Screw. They're not, I don't think they're meant for that.
No.
This one is a little more in your face about the references, but to be fair, it's also not based on a single work. It is based on all of Poe's stuff.
Sure.
So which is why basically almost every episode is the title of one of the short stories, and but it's a gimmick. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's a gimmick. It's the trappings of it. It's not that story.
Right.
So, if you are looking for a Poe adaptation, I don't think this is it at all. And in fact, I really liked it. It made Trish giggle as soon as she heard it. He referred to it wasn't so much a Poe adaptation as horror Succession. The HBO TV show, and I'm like, I think that's fairly accurate, but I don't think that's a bad thing. And so setting aside I think it's terrible as an adaptation of Poe, I'm loving it. I think so is Trish. Like, it is just so tightly put together and so nuanced in a way that I have missed. Like, I know, because Trish and I keep asking questions that then get answered. Like seemingly little, like that's clearly a little tiny flub they did or whatever. No, they knew. At one point I said, we have to stop asking questions because this show knows all the questions we're asking and it has answers for us already.
I'll grant that. Yeah. I'll grant that. Yeah.
And it's all the great people again. In recent years, I am developing a serious appreciation for Bruce Greenwood that I never had before. He plays the patriarch, and he's one of those guys. He's one of that guys to me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But just recently, I've seen a few things he's in, and it was hard because he often plays uninteresting characters and often
Yeah.
kind of shitty characters,
And kind
and
of
so it's
himself,
hard for me to
usually.
become like a fan because he's definitely not the vamping villain. He's a very sort of just gruff bad guy, and so I don't think of it. But like when I stop and look, oh, he's amazing.
Oh
And
man.
Elizabeth, not Elizabeth McGovern. It's what's her name? The Secretary of Education from Battlestar Galactica.
Oh,
Damn
his
it.
his sister. Yeah. What is
Yeah,
her name?
yeah. She, I don't believe, was in the earlier adaptations. Uh, this is a phenomenal casting choice for her. I wouldn't have thought of her, and I think she's nailing it.
Yeah. Great performances all
Um,
the way around.
all the other bits are fun. I figured out very early in the first episode, and I'm gonna say this because I don't think it's a spoiler because it is still just my theory. I don't know. But I originally thought this was going to be a story of supernatural revenge, and now I think it is a story of sort of deal with the devil kind of thing. Um, they are very deliberately sort of not telling you, but making very clear that there is something they're not telling you. And yeah, it's still got the really fun look in the backgrounds and you see thing bits. It's a little more assertive about it, but it's still ones where if you blink at the wrong time, you're gonna miss some shit. And it's just very creative. It's got some really good monologues in it. Uh yeah, I'm just having a great time with it. I'm really enjoying it. We're only the 3 episodes in, but yeah, less so for you. That is interesting.
Well, I mean,
I mean, it
again,
doesn't have the gothic feel that the other ones do, for sure.
but it's also not. It's what we want is creepy. It's not. There has creepy moments, but for the most part, it's a thriller, which we do like those. We enjoyed watching it, but
Yeah.
we're looking for something so specific around this time of year, and it's not that. I mean, again, I recommend it. I think people should watch it. It's very well made, but it's not. Hill House is just using as an example. Hill House. It's just so creepy from beginning to end. Every moment
That's
and
true.
everything
That is
connects
true.
to everything else in such a viscerally creepy way. That does happen in this more than it does in some of the other things that Flanagan does. Like some of those things you're talking about where you think this is a problem, a plot hole, and then it's not in a really creepy way. But
Yeah,
it doesn't, that's not really what
you're
the
right.
theme of the thing is.
Unsettling.
Yeah.
Hill House is wall to wall unsettling. There is not a moment of that is not unsettling.
Yeah, man.
Midnight Mass, by and large, 80%
Yeah.
unsettling.
Yeah.
There are some bits that I still maintain we just didn't need to have in Midnight Mass, but they are in view. I'm a big fan of Midnight Mass.
Sure.
Bly Manor is just suspense. They try,
And,
and I don't.
and confusion.
I think it was a weird sort of overcorrection thing. It clearly was trying to sort of do a Hill House, but it didn't in some. I don't know. It was odd. And this one has unsettling moments, but you're right. It is a lot more a thriller. Yeah, thriller is the best word in a lot of ways. It has unsettling moments, and it is very visually striking in places and things, but it is not. The atmosphere isn't there. It's you get to the points where you're like, oh, this is going to be a freaky bit.
Right.
Whereas like Hill House, your butthole is clenched the whole 10 hours of watching it or whatever. And the suspense angle of Bly Manor, for me at least, meant I got bored a lot.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm not getting bored in this, but it is in very different ways than Hill House.
But one thing that sustains you through this is the performances, and every once in a while someone gets a little bit of a soliloquy, and that's like, wow, they're so good at it, right? It's like, wow, that was really good. It is very fun to watch. It's not, and we might watch it again some other time of year, right? Because it's so good. But I don't. When Halloween time, I don't think we're going to be looking for this.
Third episode we finished, and I invented a new game that I intend to play out through the rest of it. After the episode is done, I quiz Trish on how many Carla Guginos were there.
How many what?
Carla Guginos. Carla Gugino is an actress in this. She's not a member of the family. She is a very large part of the show.
Oh.
She played a bartender in a role during a 1979 New Year's Eve.
Oh, is that
Yes.
her name?
Yes. And she's been in all of these. And this is the problem.
Why didn't I
There
know
are
she
two
that was her name?
actors in all the Mike Flanagan stuff that I constantly mix up, even though I think they're like 15 to 20 years different. One is Carla Gugino, who's an actor I have loved for ages, both as an actor and I totally have a crush on her. And the other, whose name I do not remember, who plays Camille in this one, is Mike Flanagan's wife.
Yeah,
And she
she's
shows
in
up. She
a lot
was
of
the
his
pregnant
stuff.
one in Midnight Mass and all, and she's been in all of these. She was Theo in Hill House and stuff. And Carla Gugino was the mom in Hill House.
Right.
And
She's
Carla Gugino was the narrator in Bly Manor.
Yeah, why didn't I know that was her name? She
I
was
don't
in
know. Is your
she's been in
emotion?
so many things. She was in Night at the Museum. She's been in
Oh
lots
yeah,
of
she's been around forever, never. She's a well accomplished actor long before she
I
met
must have
Mike
thought her
Flanagan.
name was something else. I don't know.
Um,
Weird.
People pronounce it differently, but so yeah, the game is how many times did you spot her in it? Because for reasons, she shows up a lot in a lot of different guises, and they are doing a really great job on the makeup and costuming for her.
Yeah, they are.
And she does a really great job with the acting, such that, well, sure enough, Trish missed one in that episode. She's like, there was this. I was like, yeah. She's like, there was this. I was like, yeah. She's like, and I think that's it. I'm like, nope. And I had to tell her when she's like, oh, do you mean? And I said, no, I mean this. And she's like, that was her. And I was like, yeah, it was her. And I only know again because I have an obsession with her. But so that's really fun. And I like that. I was very disappointed that she had such a small part in Bly Manor. And in this one, she has a very big part that also allows her to chew the fuck out of the scenery in a way that I adore. But it's just giving her so much rage. She's doing so many different things and she's doing it so well. And yeah, just a lot of good actors. I love that every time we do, ever since Bly Manor and then Midnight Mass and now this, the dude who in this one is playing Napoleon and was the sheriff in Midnight Mass and was Owen the cook in Bly Manor. Every role he gets is like so different from the last one, and I love it.
He's almost unrecognizable in this role. I've never seen him play a role like this, and he's so good. That's ridiculous.
But every time, and Bly Manor versus Midnight Mass, which again I know Midnight Mass isn't technically part of this series, but it's a lot of the same people. It's Mike Flanagan, whatever. Those two roles were so different from each other, and this one is so different from both of those. And I had never known him before this, and I am a huge fan now.
He was in iZombie, the TV show. That's where I was first introduced to him. Great role in that. He had a great role in
that. Tania Miller, who was she was an employee at Bly Manor. I don't remember what her actual position was. She the governess? No, she wasn't the governess. She was, I don't know. She's the bald black lady. I hate to say it, but it's the bald black lady.
Oh yeah, she's in.
We recently saw her in Peripheral.
Peripheral, yeah, really good.
She got to be a villain, and in this, she's again very different. I'm becoming a pretty big fan of hers out of this. Killer performances all around.
Yeah, really good.
The youngest Usher kid has two like hangers on, like two sort of friends that are just like clearly sort of groupies for him almost. When he's remember like he's planning a party and everything and he has those friends.
Yeah. Oh, is one of them I couldn't. It was one of them. Quinn. What's her name?
Yes, Molly Quinn,
Molly Quinn.
aka the daughter from Castle,
Castle. Yeah.
which
She
is
looked very
really
different,
funny
but
to see her as like basically a drug addict
yeah,
squatter
yeah.
in this, and she nails it for what little
She
role it
looked
is.
very
But
different, but I did recognize her.
yeah, well,
But
I knew her, and so I looked her up right at the time.
but him, the youngest usher, and those two assistants of Camilla's or whatever, they were
Camille,
all
yeah.
in Midnight Club.
Were they?
As was the young wife of Roderick, she was in
Was
it too.
she?
She was in it.
Oh,
She's in Midnight Club.
because I haven't been able to spot them. Like they did not seem familiar to me.
Well, so yeah, those two assistants, him, the youngest usher, that guy, and the young wife of Roderick, they were all in Midnight Club. I don't
I
remember
also
anybody else.
think the youngest, not the youngest version, the second youngest version of Madeline in the flashbacks
Mhm.
might have been the young version of one of the daughters in Hill House. I
Well, I
didn't
mean,
look that one up, but she kind of, I mean, he
the
reuses the same people,
the
which
youngest.
is often
you
a problem.
Did you say the second youngest Madeline?
I think so.
Yeah, she was.
Because the
she was
youngest is like 8 or something, but
no,
like
the second youngest, she was in Hill House. That's right.
yeah.
And
Who unfortunately I only remember as the one where the dead kitten came back to life.
yeah, it was her.
Yeah,
But
that's all I remember her for now from Hill House.
also the married young Roderick, he was in Midnight Mass. And
who was he in Midnight Mass?
Well, he was like the main young lead guy who was like who came back from
really? That's him?
Yeah, that's him.
He's so 70s up in the flashbacks. I guess I didn't recognize.
And his wife was the flapper kind of character in Hill House, the one that talked about the screaming meanies or whatever.
Oh,
she was in Hill House. So they used a lot of people, and you might not have recognized them because they looked very different.
I think can be problematic to reuse people like this.
It can be,
unless you've got fucking amazing actors, and I have not been disappointed in a single one of these in any of them so far.
Me neither.
That might be. I mean, Mike Flanagan tells an interesting story, but to be fair, most of Mike Flanagan's stories are just him dramatizing shit that's happened in his life. Midnight Mass is famously just his struggles with alcoholism, kind of like Stephen King does, I think. But he can also coax such great performances out of these people.
It's just amazing. Yeah, it really is. It's worth watching just for that.
But yeah, it is a very different. If you're looking for unsettling, I might recommend The Empty Man. I would say it is quite creepy.
I do have it written down here. I hope we can find it.
But interesting. What you're saying makes sense. It didn't occur to me that you would not have the same feeling about it. But now that I think about it, I am really enjoying it in different ways than I enjoyed Hill House or Midnight Mass. Well, and I think that must be an extra blow because creepy and unsettling is Edgar Allan Poe.
Well, I mean, it made me
jam.
It kind of made me hopeful that this would be that. So I can't say there wasn't some disappointment, but I also have watched and appreciated his other stuff. Like Midnight Club's perfectly good, and I even like Bly Manor. It's perfectly good. It's just not the thing we're looking for here.
No, but so, I mean, I don't think this is you getting your hopes up thing, because as somebody who's not at all disappointed, I agree with you. It's not that.
No.
And I could understand why you would think going in that it would be.
Well, or at least hope it would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, and especially for me, where I know I've talked to a lot of other people who've read a lot of Poe. I haven't read everything from Poe, but I've read a lot of it. And, they might appreciate different things than I appreciate, but there's almost always this common ground with the mood and aesthetic of it, right?
Yeah.
And that's just not what this did, like the if you're thinking, well, I won't get into any spoilers or anything, but it's just not that. So, which is fine.
No.
It
But
was
it's
perfectly
very good.
fine. Yeah, it's very good. It's just not, that's not what I was hoping for.
I also, and I feel like this is an important thing to say when reviewing TV shows nowadays, and correct, you tell me if you don't agree or if you do. I think it is one that you can safely watch the first episode and know how you're going to feel.
Well, I'd say that's probably true. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
very consistent.
So give it a shot.
Yeah, it's very consistent.
Well, because there are a lot of shows, and especially the first episode. As a rule, we will usually watch 2 episodes of a thing because pilots are a problem.
Yeah, usually.
and even if it's not, the people still writing in that mindset, even if you didn't write it as a pilot, there is this need to shove the premise so tightly into the first episode that sometimes it has a feel that none of the episodes after it have,
Correct.
for good or for bad.
Yeah, correct.
But having only watched 3, I'm like, no, each episode felt the same. I mean, they were all unique or whatever, but like
super
your
consistent.
feelings about the first episode will be your feelings about
I totally agree with that. Yeah, very
which
consistent.
makes it easier to work with. So
very consistent.
Did you ever watch The Pale Blue Eye?
I mean, that sounds familiar. I don't know.
It's on Netflix. It's fairly recent. Christian Bale, and it's about either him or a different guy plays Edgar Allan Poe at West Point.
Yeah, a different guy plays Poe. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I'd seen a trailer recently, and I'm like, I think he's there, but the other guy is actually Poe.
Yeah,
did that manage it?
Well, I thought
I
so.
want to watch it, but it's like almost 3 hours. So,
I'm trying to remember. I mean, I think we liked it all right. I don't think it like blew us away or anything. But yeah, I mean, because it's sort of, yeah, that very much it's built all around Poe and his everything. Sure. And the guy that plays Poe, he does it. It's very interesting. It doesn't, you can't really think of it as like any type of realistic portrayal, right? You've really got to appreciate the choices that this actor makes. And when you do that, it's kind of fun and interesting. And Christian Bale's a very good actor. So as I recollect, it's worth giving a look, but I mean, there's lots of things to have a problem with or not, if you're being generous. I think we liked it all right, but I don't remember so much about it. So I guess it didn't impress me that much, but I don't remember like disliking it. And then we were glad we watched it.
I should find it. I haven't seen it, but the Dark Corners review guy I talked about did a half-hour. So he's very interesting because the bulk of his YouTube channel is making fun of shitty movies and like critiquing them in a bad, like how bad they are. But he is very clearly a major film student. And when he starts talking about shit, he's like into it. And he has a half-hour video he did on the Edgar Allan Poe adaptations done by Roger Corman. That again I haven't watched because it's too long, but I keep meaning to get around to it. But I don't listen to this podcast. I can only handle pedantry for so long. And a half hour might be a bit much for me. But I think he thought in a lot of ways they actually did a pretty good job with some of it. But I think you might find the analysis interesting, and it might possibly give you some movies to check out. But
what's this called again? This thing you're talking about, the podcast?
I believe it's called, the YouTube channel is called Dark Corners Reviews, I believe.
I mean, it's not like it's hard. Like, I thought Wednesday did a great job of capturing the whole, this is Nevermore, and this is all based on Poe. I mean, I thought you guys did a good job with that, I thought. Design.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have said. I mean, I liked it, but I don't know that I said that. But I do think Poe is one of those that maybe isn't supposed to be TV and movies.
Maybe you're right. I mean, yeah,
I don't know, because the times I have read Poe, and I've read a fair bit, though admittedly not for quite a while now. I don't think I've had a movie that ever gave me the same vibe as one of those stories,
Well,
really.
no, neither have I. I don't know if it's
Um,
impossible, but it
well, but that's this guy thinks that it's very difficult to adapt, but I think he is a big fan of Poe as well. Um, I like him. He's one of those people who does who treats Roger Corman appropriately, I think. Roger Corman famously made trashy, cheap movies forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. But he also found a lot of untested geniuses. And so many of the most famous people you know from genre films got their start uh, at Roger Corman. James Cameron, off the top of my head, is a
mm,
big one.
mm,
Um, but so consequently, you have some Roger Corman films that were cheap and quickly made, a lot of corners cut, but they had somebody who really could catch something. And so you can find some really amazing stuff in there.
mm.
Also, some of it's just a damn fun time. Some of it's not worth seeing, but some of it's just fun too. But yeah, sometimes you get some really amazing things out of there. A lot of people get to sort of, they got more room to play around then in a way that a studio wouldn't let them normally. And so they could get vision out of it. So I find it interesting. Anyway, I can't remember. Did you watch Altered Carbon?
I mean, we watched an episode and then we stopped. I mean, we didn't like hate
It's
it, but we got distracted by other things and never got back to it.
it's fine. Not that I don't think there's a lot of reason to. I had read the books, and so it kind of, and also I love that genre when I can find it. Uh One of the things about it in the first, it was 2 seasons, and they changed a lot of things, but essentially the first season was the first book, and the second season was the third book in the trilogy. They kind of skipped the second one,
Hmm.
merged it a little bit with the second one. But so in the first one, this is all set in the far, far future. And it is a conceit of the premise that at a certain point, what was in fashion were AI run hotels. And so an artificial intelligence would create, they'd be like themed in a certain way and stuff like that. And they were sort of, it didn't work out because the AIs were sort of annoying because they were programmed to really want to like be a good host and entertain you or whatever. And it just kind of bugged people. And so they didn't get demolished or anything, but they just sort of are mostly empty now. And our hero, because he's a gritty noir anti-hero sort, goes into one of these because no one else will be around or whatever. And the AI is super excited and becomes essentially like a sidekick
Hmm.
in the first book. In the book, it is a groovy 60s counterculture themed place, and the AI takes the form of Jimi Hendrix.
Hmm.
When making the TV show, the estate of Jimi Hendrix was not willing to give those rights. So
Hmm.
instead, the hotel is called The Raven, and it's Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh,
And he
interesting.
was absolutely a fan favorite. He had a much bigger part in this, such that they basically came up with an excuse, even though it takes place on an entirely different planet, to continue that character into the second season because they really enjoyed him. And it was very fun, and I've actually looked up the guy since. I like seeing him and other stuff, but it is fun in this super far future transhuman cyberpunk noir thing. The sidekick is Edgar Allan Poe, and he's just there.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
it's kind of a fun time for that. But
do you
I
think
think I think he gets overplayed. But if you use Poe and Poe concepts right, it can be really fun, including Follow the House Usher. I think it's very fun how they used it. It's, you can't say it's an adaptation of Poe's work, but it uses facets of things he came up with in a very clever way.
but I do think that horror, good horror, is kind of timeless, right? I mean, it hits themes that you just know that 200 years from now, people are still going to resonate with people.
Yeah, yeah.
It just seems to me. So I think Poe will be relevant in the far future. I think
No,
that's
no, and you,
interesting.
you can see that kind of stuff. Another thing I watch is called Good Bad Flicks that honestly is a very similar premise. They mostly make fun of shitty movies and won't sort of review them, but mostly make fun of them.
Mhm.
But he has a series within there that he calls Exploring, and these are longer videos where he dives into the history of the making of a film that has like an interesting thing to it. And actually, the James Cameron thing comes up because James Cameron got his start working on a Roger Corman movie that was a transparent and blatant ripoff of Alien.
Mm.
And in it, they did some things that James Cameron took with some like effects and style or whatever that James Cameron took with him when he made Aliens. So it comes full circle in a real fun way. But he recently did the thing from another world, which is when people talk about the thing and they say the original thing and they mean the John Carpenter one, they're full of shit. That's a remake. The original one is the thing from another world, which, to be fair, has so much less to do with the original short story it is based on than the John Carpenter one. But it's another one that like was a huge deal. It is very much a sci-fi horror of the era, like 1950s, I think. But it incorporates a lot of things that are still that resonated into how films are made today, and is still one that in certain ways holds up as being a worthwhile experience, not just for its camp quality.
Right.
So yeah, I do think any genre stuff can essentially be elevated to being timeless if you do it right.
Sure. Yeah, that's what I think too.
For all the many complaints I have about Tolkien, and they are many, I don't think he suffers from the time period other than some of the racism, which is there, people, trust me, is there. And in fact, as I think I've said before, Tolkien straight up said dwarves were the Jews. Um, but outside of that, I think Tolkien's stuff holds up as well as it ever did as time goes on. It is very much timeless, and whatever good you find of it, and there is some good, I think it holds up. Now, at this point, not unlike Sherlock Holmes, it is quickly losing all meaning because it is being adapted so many times in so many places. But that's not the fault of the original work. That's the fault of late stage capitalism. Um, so yeah, I would agree with you. And I think Poe is unique. I have not read. You can get some American folklore that I can understand is like was written around the same time and the same area, but I don't think I've ever read anything that was like Poe. Certain Gaiman stories are probably the closest, but it is rare, and they tend to be Gaiman's lesser known ones.
I mean, I think Hawthorne was pretty innovative in those areas, but yes, not
Which, to
quite
be
like
fair,
Poe.
I've not read
Not quite
hardly
like
any.
Poe. Well, for example, Hawthorne wrote, I think I can't find anyone who did it earlier, had like a mad scientist in a lab with a deformed assistant and all that stuff. I think he originated that whole thing. And he wrote it well. It was very atmospheric and whatever, but it still doesn't approach what Poe was doing as far as all of that.
I think
So,
Poe pulls off a weird mundane horror in a way. Like, I mean, Poe is about crazy ass people, but like actually there might be a little similarity with some Lovecraft now that I think of it.
a little
But
bit.
again, Poe seems more grounded.
Well,
Um,
yes, and I think a lot of people make that point about him. Where so if you read like Mary Shelley does this, and I mean I think a lot of early 19th century authors do this. You can read it and say, oh, this person's kind of talking about mental illness. but Poe's really calling it mental illness. Like he's not just talking about it that way. He's like I've seen him portrayed in fiction as being a rationalist and all this stuff. And I don't know if that's true of him personally, but you can see how someone could think that based on what he writes, because
Yeah.
he'll write about all of these romantic characters who have all these huge emotions and huge everything, but he does it so much more, and Hawthorne did this too, so much more in a context of like calling it an illness, calling it affliction, calling it a disorder even. And it's interesting.
Other authors of the time and later on and so forth, those emotions and those attitudes lead to exciting adventure and romance and things, and are often glorified in a certain way,
Or
as
supernatural,
opposed to Poe, where it's like, yeah, if you think this way and you live this way and you act on it, fucked up things happen.
yeah, this is I think we read
this is not the way to go about things.
Yeah, we read House of Usher. Like it's so short. I just read it out loud to Abby right before we watched. And, you know, I think he uses the word disorder to describe the main character and his delusions. And it's like, that's very interesting. Now, again, I think people totally underestimate the understanding of early 19th century writers about mental illness, because Hawthorne is always talking about repression and all these things that are long before Freud. But but Poe specifically, instead of making it a mysterious or even mystical thing, he goes right for saying this person is mentally ill. I mean, he practically says it. And so that's kind of interesting. Nobody does it quite like that the way he does.
Now, to fly in the face of all this, I think my favorite Poe story, and I think it is obscure enough you might not know it.
Possibly.
I Bet the Devil My Head.
You know, I've heard that sounds familiar, but I don't.
It's a phrase. It's a phrase people will use. And actually, somebody, probably Jazz, is going to tell me it's not actually a Poe story. Then I'm going to feel really bad. But it is of that ilk.
That sounds
it's definitely a horror story, and it's so short. The whole it's another one of those, like, it's being told in first person, but it's all about my friend here. Which I think is kind of a Poe thing in
Poe does
certain
that
stories
too, right?
But so yeah, this friend was always essentially, it was a boastful thing, because you say, "I bet the devil my head" is just sort of an extreme way of like, definitely. And so there's a little bit about like this guy was always saying that, and he was very thing. And then we go to this covered bridge, and there's like a gate in the middle of it, and he's like, "I could jump over that. I could just vault over it." And I was like, "No, you could." He's like, "Yeah, I bet the devil my head." And then this little dude comes out of the corner and is like, "It's a very good deal, dude. Shake your head. Just sign here." And he goes, "What?" And he's like, "Go ahead." And he goes to jump, and like there's a metal thing on the top, and it cuts his head off. The end. That's the whole fucking story. And I don't know why. I love it to death. Like, it makes so little sense. But it's just like, my friend was always saying, "I bet the devil my head." And he said it one time, and the devil showed up and shook his hand, and then his head fell off. The end. It's actually not dissimilar from that joke story that my family tells about the guy with the golden screw in his navel. Have I talked? I think I talked about this.
Maybe you have.
Now, this is a wonderful story, because this is a joke that was told in my family for a long time. And I told it in college. And my best friend in college went on to get married and have children and tell them this joke, and it became essentially their favorite bedtime story. And such that years later, he sent me a video of like his 6-year-old retelling this story. So here it is. So there was this guy, and he was born with a golden screw in his navel. And he always had it, and nobody knew where it came. His parents had no idea, nothing. And as he got older, it made him very uncomfortable, because like he never would go like when he go swim, he couldn't go swimming because he wouldn't take his shirt off, because people were like, "Why the fuck is that?" Like, thought it was a weird body jewelry thing, and he wasn't. And dating or sex or anything, like, always you got to explain, and you can't explain because you're like, "I don't know." And so at a certain point in his young adulthood, he started looking for a way to deal with it. And Doctors didn't have an answer. They were loath to take it out because it looked like it might be attached. They didn't know. It was not it was not easily removed as far as medical science was concerned. And so he looked more and more and eventually started getting weird places, like in the movies where like then he's in this Nepalese village and he's talking to this guy under a thing or whatever. But anyway, he does finally get to this place where he hears about this guy who knows about weird things and how to fix them. And he finds this guy and he says, I can solve this for you. You pay me and I will tell you the secret. And he says, okay. So he pays him a bunch of money. And he's like, okay. It's like, here's a vial of this stuff. What you're gonna do the next full moon, you're gonna go to a hill somewhere that is very open and the light of the full moon can fall on you. You're gonna strip down naked. You're gonna pour this stuff on your stomach, make sure you hit the navel and everything, and then you lay there and you're gonna sleep there. And in the morning, it's gonna be gone. It's like, okay, I mean, I've tried weirder things, so I'll do it. So he goes and finds this hill the next full moon, and luckily it wasn't winter, so it was warm enough. And so he pours the stuff on him, and he falls asleep naked, and he's out. And while he was asleep, down a moonbeam came this little gnome, got to the bottom, and he hopped up on the guy's stomach, but the guy didn't wake up. And he pulled out of somewhere a gold screwdriver. Took it, did the thing, he took the screw out, and he went back up the moonbeam. It was gone. Guy slept through it all. And in the morning, he woke up and he looked down, and the screw was gone. It just was like a normal navel. It was awesome. And he was so excited, he jumped up and his butt fell off.
Okay.
And that became my friend's children's favorite bedtime.
I mean, you should always ask about the side effects. That's the moral of that story.
That's there was, I don't even want to say a style of joke. There was an era of joke like that I always loved. That is just like, I'm gonna talk until you're almost asleep, and then I'm gonna hit you with a. There's so many. Getting rid of a tapeworm involving a boiled egg and a bran muffin. There's a version of that where it's just like the joke is the level of time and the aristocrats. The aristocrats is a classic version of this, where the whole point is you go on and just sort of excruciating detail, and it's such to paraphrase Hannah Gadsby, builds up so much tension that even with a very simple, often even dumb sort of thing, it breaks it to a degree. And I've always loved those kind of jokes. That's my jam. That was the kind my family told. There were a lot of those. Now that I think about it, I can think back all of the jokes, and they're all very weak punchlines, but they are brought about after long, arduous stories, so that just the relief makes you laugh.
Right. Nice.
And his butt fell off. All right, people. Definitely not going to promise that we won't have more spooky stuff, but we were here. It was time. There was too much not to talk about. So if you've got other suggestions, we are on the hunt right now. And William and his wife are picky snobs, but me and my wife are grabbing most things here. I'm writing stuff down all the time. If you have suggestions, please put them in the comments on YouTube, or go to the blog, magicaltalkinghat.com, and give us your suggestions. It helps if you give what you like about it, because that does inform for us, because we're looking for specific things. There's a lot of horror I don't give a shit about. Not, for example, neither of us give a shit about gore, and I think, apologies if I'm speaking out of turn for you.
No, you're not.
All other things being equal, we'd love to not have gore.
Yeah, all of the things being equal.
I can appreciate a really good effect sometimes, or a really inventive kill, but by and large, gore is never what I'm looking for. And by and large, it's something that I tolerate rather than enjoy. So,
agreed. Which is difficult for someone. I do like vampire fiction, but when it gets to the actual sucking of the blood and stuff, it's like, ugh, I don't, yuck. I'm looking the other way.
I'm fine with that. He's a pansy.
I don't like it. But I do like vampire fiction. So
Yeah. I like the concept of vampire fiction.
yeah.
I find that I almost never actually like vampire fiction.
Well, yeah, some of it's really garbage. So
I maintain to this day one of the best vampire movies I've seen is Bram Stoker's Dracula. And I don't think it's that good, but it's one of the best ones I've seen. And actually, it's worse. There's one that is a spin-off of the not very good Subspecies series called The Vampire Journals. It is maybe the best vampire movie I ever saw. Admittedly, I haven't seen it in decades, but and again, not because it was particularly good, but it was just one of the best I've seen.
I mean,
Because most vampire movies I see are garbage.
I thought the original Nosferatu was pretty good, but
which I haven't seen. I want to watch that and then immediately follow it up with Shadow of the Vampire. Have you've seen Shadow of the Vampire? The fictionalized telling of the making of it.
Oh yes, very good.
Yeah.
Really
but that's the thing. I want to see the original for like right before for that sort of oomph.
Yeah, it would be a cool double feature for sure.
Yeah. Because it popped up recently. That came up and I'm like, oh shit, I need to watch the original. So yeah, we might get to that. And that I'm willing to believe is quite good. But and it's just a fun story. I don't like true crime and stuff, but like what little is known about the dude who played the vampire in Nosferatu is fucking cool. I do not believe he's actually a vampire. I do think it's pretty fucking cool how it all played out and make you go, whoa. Look into it, people. Max von Sydow. No, wait, that's not his name.
That's not his name.
Shrek. His name is Shrek.
I think it is something like that.
Yeah, no, you think I'm making a joke, but no, I think it's Max Shrek, or maybe even Von Shrek. I think that might be why.
Could be, yep.
But yeah, I think Shrek is his last name. I don't know that it's spelled the same as Michael Myers spells it, but yes, and that famous bit from Nosferatu where he turns and then the silent movie thing comes up and says, "Get out of my swamp, donkey!" That famous line. Yeah, go to the blog, magictalkinghat.com. It's spooky season. We all love it. By we all, I mean me and William right here. So if you're listening, you're legally required to love it as well. So tell us your bits. We still got half the month left. Make it happen. And also I celebrate spooky season all year long. So although I also spend all year not giving candy to children, including now and including on Halloween. So that's how I celebrate. Don't disregard my faith.